the way that we stay here.
Agentic AI in DevOps with Fernando, Andrey, and Vladimir. Me being Andrey. Today is a less structured episode, no news and no main topic as is, but we're going to be talking about actually like how AI, if you like, kind of episode. What works well in our daily life, what we use in our work, and what works, what doesn't, and how it's different compared to what used to be a half a year ago. Well, that would be December. Let's say September last year, something like along that scale.
Which in like AI years feels like a different age, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
And with this, let's see what Fernanda has to share.
Yeah, so I think, the idea here is since we touched on a lot of topics, right? We are like, how are we actually using it on a day-to-day for DevOps work? So for me, I think a big thing that I noticed recently is I stopped checking a little bit more the code manually that comes. So maybe to circle back, right? So my main tool for AI on a day-to-day is Claude Code. So I started with Cursor. Then when I saw Claude Code, I really liked the way that it worked. But like with every other AI tool, the output in the beginning was not like something I felt I could rely a lot on. So what I started to do is like, okay, how was I developing software and infrastructure and doing these things before? Was always having the proper set of testing and everything like the usual practices that we would have, linting, testing, and all of this. So I baked that into my AI workflow so that every time I run something, and I built a SKU for that, and we have talked about all of these topics in the past, right? But like with the SKU, which already runs those processes, right? So it writes the code and then automatically calls the whole linting and it finds the issues and then it fixes, then it runs the tests, it writes the test. So at the end, I'm like, I want to have 98% coverage, for example, for test coverage. So it keeps pushing. And then sometimes I see when the session runs too long, then it starts to go in circles. That's the moment that I stop. Context is not working. Clean it up. And then in a fresh session, say like, hey, complete this task, right? And later I can explain how my workflow for tasks work. But basically, my main message is like, I try to bring the classical, let's say, software engineering and engineering practices to this new age so that the output would be more reliable, and it made a huge difference, right? And now I can make changes more confident that things won't break because I do have the tests, I have the linting, I have all the stuff that we used to use in the past, which I see a lot of people kind of dropped, right? And they see AI spitting out the code on the other side. It must work because you look at it and it seems like it does the thing, but there is a bunch of bugs and things behind the scenes that that AI doesn't catch just because sometimes it just puts a stub there and it moves on. And then you think everything is fully implemented and then you have a surprise later, which happened to me in the beginning. So, I don't know for you guys, like, is this something that you were using as well with the old practice?
Yeah,
let's say if we could call old.
you mentioned like as the code would sometimes contain the surprises. Time to time, for me, it's feel like as AI written code is just a project which is written by someone else. It's kind of yours because it's on your machine. It's created by your prompts. But when you open it, you think, oh, where's the things? Where's the variables? How we name it here? You feel a bit lost, basically, if you open this AI, totally AI generated thing. It's kind of hard sometimes. But I, as a big fan of this security, and hooks in this AI harness, I like to write different hooks for myself. One of examples, it's audit logs of all the commands which AI execute, like as bash, shells, or whatever. It's just simple hook, like as after the command execution, we can just save. Kind of just in case of something was wrong, I at least know when it was, which agent did it, what was the comment, I have evidence. For example, if it's a go sometime in the wrong direction, I can catch it, at least in a review. So, or at least I can prove that it wasn't me. If, for example, it's a multiple, it's an interesting moment. If it's a multiple people running AI and AI agents, whose agent actually make the mistake? Might have audit log. So, interesting thing, what I also noticed, it's running the hook on the command failure. Like as if the bash or Python or something script fails, I collect this result as a command failure, as a learning journal, and at the end of the day, as a part of daily routines, I improve the skills or whatever was used just to not make the same mistakes again. Because not time to time, AI not understand how to use different tools, maybe some simple bash commands because they're different in Linux and the macOS. Maybe it's used the Linux versions, not the macOS version. I use Mac, so these tiny things, just a bit to reduce the token or subscription consumption. And maybe another one is part of, again, daily routines. It's how I call this automation or routine in Codex. It's certain changes. I like to scan the code for the dead code, because I have a skill for dead code scanning. Inside that, there's a couple of tools. In every language, there's different tools, because AI like to write the code without actually understanding if it's in use or that function is not in use anymore, kind of a dead code behavior.
Dead code,
But
right.
but it's a part of daily routines, like as whatever you as a developer or infrastructure engineer are supposed to do daily, maybe update documentation, check the latest version of libraries, check like as the latest version of SDK if something new appear, check code for security, check for dead code, check the code like as for review, what we actually did in a previous day, maintain the nodes, run tests, just some basic stuff. And I run it on a routine automation every day in the morning, like it's before I start working, it's already done. And I can understand like as where we are in the project at least.
Nice.
Like to add something here, have a similar routine, so I don't do it at the end of the day. I usually like when the skill runs, especially if it's like a skill that there are skills that are mechanical, like open pull request, wait for CI to finish, pull in the commit. You don't need to improve that one much. You quite quickly arrive to something that works. But you might have skills that evolve over the time. I give you an example. For instance, you are DevOps / platform / whatever you call yourself, engineer working with infrastructure. You have a zoo of repositories to maintain, right? You might have like a Docker files all over the place, like those definitely will be all over the place. Then you might or might not have a Terraform in each of the repositories. You might have like a humongous big Terraform repository, or you might have a Helm files all over the place, or like in one centralized repository. You see what I mean? And then before that, like before we had AI superpowers, right? You quite often would go around repositories and lift them up to your current standard. This is how we do things. And this is how we do things is a moving target because it is changing. And then like writing documentation now about all of this, especially like if you're starting from scratch, maybe organization wasn't in a great shape where you arrived, or was it like a startup where documentation was not a priority and you were like focusing on building? Anyhow, like it's quite often that people don't have a documentation about how they do things with infrastructure. There are some undocumented conventions. So what you do is you basically, you can start with, for instance, coming into repository and like first thing you do, like first time, like you just basically give commands to AI showing how you do things and ask it to run the commands. Like you come into repository and then you have to think as you would think, right? Like, okay, first things first, I'm going to check like Terraform model versions. Like you tell AI, go check Terraform model versions. They're like, maybe you have some local Terraform, like your private Terraform. Like then you tell AI, where is that? So like you look at Docker files, maybe you have standardized base images. You tell it where it is. And you basically guide it through that repository as you would do it, but you basically tell it to do it instead of you. And then you tell it like, write a skill. Then you move to the next repository and you say like, repository uplift. And it runs a skill, spin its wheels. Most probably it will run into something it haven't seen before because like all the repository is different. And then you kind of keep updating the skill as you go. And then like I usually would run it. And in the end of the execution, I would say like, if you learn anything new, like if there's any opportunity for the improvement, how you did it, go contribute it back to the skill. And because all the repositories are on a file system, instead of pointing to the repo from where the skill arrived via the private plugin marketplace, horrible name, I just point to the local repository, telling like, go fix it there. And that kind of allows you to create a living documentation that anyone else can use later on. Like, act like you would.
It's also kind of like bring maybe a more junior person in a team to more senior level, because the skill is describe more details and nuances which more new people may just miss or not think in advance. So it's allow to kind of uplift the expertise in the team.
The challenge there is kind of a little bit, because like especially if it comes to infrastructure, one skill might be just too a little of the box to put all of this knowledge into. So you want to like slice it into sub skills. Like, okay, so you found a Docker file. Like if there is a Docker file, that's a skill for Docker files. This is how you do Docker files. Like Terraform is like this.
Yeah, it's a certain level of standards, right, for a Docker file. Like everything's supposed to be like it's not running as root and like it's all of this checkboxes, basically.
You basically kind of add it as you go, and the nice thing is like you basically teach it how you run Terraform, what kind of Terraform flavor you have, because it could be TerraGrant, OpenTop, or whatever.
Whatever it is.
And thing is like the writing this kind of documentation from scratch is just hard. You don't really know from which end to hold the stick. I mean, it's just too much. But that allows anyone, like this approach allows anyone to gradually start building this documentation, capture it from your head and store it as a living documentation. It's like a run box, right? Which you can actually run now.
This is exactly how I started to solve what Vladimir was saying in the beginning about looking at the code and say, this is my machine, but is not the way I would do it, right? So it looks like someone else's code. So I also like a way back created this skill that was similar to the process Andrey mentioned. And then I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of my development skill. So every time I'm building something, I always call that skill. And inside of the references folder, then I have a bunch of references like this is how I structure my Terraform. This is how I deal with Docker. And in the skill MD, it has just the references, right? Like if you're working with Docker, look at this reference file that's part of the skill. And over time, now when I look at the code, I was like, yeah, that is how I would have written this if it was me, because there are snippets of projects that I had. So as I look at this project, use this particular part as a reference, right? So it takes and puts into that reference file. And it helped a lot to get something that's like, oh, it's 95% there. Like sometimes you still need to tell it like, hey, this is not exactly how I want it. But it helped a lot. And it's indeed of this ongoing thing, right? That you keep teaching by adding these reference files.
I think it's also helped when you, for example, develop some project, it's kind of works, you leave it alone because everything is fine, no features, nothing. But after a while, we back to that project and everything in its exact same places as we expect, because it was according to the skill. Which could be quite nice because after a year, you may back to it to patch some small stuff. And things are in unexpected places without learning from the scratch again what it is.
Yeah, I think one thing as you guys were talking, came back again from this kind of old style and things I have seen happening, is that because AI can, let's say, output so much code, I see a lot of people forgetting to commit the changes, right? So you're like, you just go from build to build to build to build, and then you're like, oh, now I have this gigantic change, and then I write one commit, because now you can say, if something breaks, I can just ask AI to fix it, right? But there are changes that are very hard to undo, right? And sometimes there are changes in the same file. So this is also something on the, let's say, way of working that I also baked into the skills, like this developer skill, let's say. That's like, hey, once you're done with your work, commit. And the commit is gated, right? Like you need to approve. So sometimes, like when it gets to that point, I'm like, let me do a final check here. By then it already ran the linting, the tests and everything, and then it says I'm good, let me commit. So then you kind of have that track, right? Like a record that you can go back in case AI messed up somewhere. You can say like, oh, when you build this feature, you broke the other one. And now next time, remember to check whatever thing you did wrong.
Yeah, I actually understand what you mean. I know some developers were kind of against AI because they say, oh, yes, it's run for a whole day, and after it doesn't work, I have to just revert everything. Maybe they just forget to commit the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so much easier now, right? To just forget it and let it do the stuff.
Yeah.
So.
It's
There is
true, yeah.
about forgetting stuff. And that's a big one, actually. So when we're getting a new tool, it's very easy to just start applying it to what are we doing to do that faster without thinking. Does it make what we're doing obsolete, or should we be doing it in some other way? I give you an example. So, for instance, take me. I tend to spend evenings coding, right? Like building the project. So I call it a second shift. Like I get kids to the bed, 9 to 12. I have a time which is calm, like no meetings, no one bothering you on Slack. Life is kind of on pause, and you have 3 hours to make something happen. Then you get AI, so you can do more stuff happen in those 3 hours, and it feels like a right thing to do. But it's the right thing to do is actually to stop, pause, and think. What is it are you doing? And like, is there is other way now of doing the same thing? The problem with the second shift kind of stuff is that you are not the sharpest at that point. And with AI, you basically have to take a lot of decisions very fast. This is like, and that's quite exhausting mentally. Especially, well, if you know what you are doing, it's a little bit easier. If not, you actually have to spend more time with AI to learn about the options you are offered. So it could be exhausting, and you kind of need to be fresh for that. So it's not very smart to do it in the evening. I mean, you kind of still you're pretty much doing the same amount of work, plus or minus, maybe a little bit more, but just because you are not on top of your mental capacity, you just cannot process all of this stuff efficiently enough. So what you need to do is, like, if you read the books, for instance, right? So there was a 4-hour work week by Tim Ferriss. It's going to be 20 years ago. I mean, it was published almost 20 years ago. That stuff makes you feel old. Anyhow, there he advocated processing mail in batches instead of like checking your mailbox all the time. So you could kind of apply the same thinking. So what I'm trying to do with my life now is actually trying to go to sleep earlier instead. So I can wake up earlier. So instead of, waking up 7, 8, I would wake up 5, right? And then I have 2 hours before kids get up. If I go back to bed 10. Didn't work so far because I was sick for 3 weeks. So I just sleep 9 hours instead of 7.
Which is also good,
Which is also good. I mean, it's still a good
Yeah.
decision. Don't get me wrong.
Good thing. Sleep 9 hours in this economy. It's quite good.
I think I would be even worse, like with my condition right now. Like this strange sickness that goes around now. Anyhow, but hopefully by the time I'm back to the normal shape, I will actually wake up at 5 a.m. And that brings me to the thing is like, again, like how do you code with AI? So you could either give it a task, like the plan, for instance, right? So plan kind of already forces you to do decisions up front. Usually not everyone using plans, and you end up with a lot of assumptions. There is a quite popular grill me skill, which basically forces AI to interview you to get an alignment, which is I think it's a great thing. If you haven't tried, you should give it a try. It was recommended to me many times, but I was kind of like, what is this? But like after I tried it a few times, I mean, like you can write your own if you want. I kind of have my own, but the idea is the same. It's like the same idea applies, is that you kind of asking AI to interview you really hard to make sure that there are no assumptions. So you pretty much forcing to have all decisions up front. And then assuming that you also have like the coding skills that Fernando described, or like infrastructure skills that tells AI how to do it and keep it on track, when you make all the decisions, you need to spend less time checking the output. So my current best thinking is to basically wake up 5 a.m. and then spend 2 hours with AI grilling me on multiple questions while like I'm at sharpest, I'm rested, I can take a lot of decisions. Then I get kids to school. At night, meetings, everyone have meetings. But now, during the meeting time, I actually already have all the plans made. And that was something that I think it was Vladimir's recommendations one while.
Yeah,
so like I'm not the smartest here in the room coming up with the good ideas. I'm just like smart enough to stop what I'm doing and listen to the people around me. So I think that's something that I will like right now. I'm spending 3-4 hours in like interview mode a day. Like that's my work day right now.
It's another one actually. It's yes, grill me is quite cool, but it's another mode. If you ask AI to argue with you, like argue till death or whatever, completely switch the behavior of AI. But it's just okay, you want this, you're fine. Just ask it to argue with you. You definitely you can't win AI if you try to push some your ideas through argue mode. It's not possible.
I saw a person today trying to argue with Boris, and like it was not going anywhere.
It's not good.
I can be exhausting. AI
but
is
one tweak that I have done to the to the grill me, like my own taste to it. So I would run that in the Claude Code. It would be done in Cursor. Doesn't really matter. What I do is I would use other harnesses as a way to shell out a safe context, like similarly to the sub-agents pretty much, but just getting a different model's take on it. So I would like have the Claude Code doing the interview, but I would tell it before starting interview, shell out to Codex and ask the Codex to run multiple researchers for me. So like there is basically context coming from me. There is already context saved in the repository, like because I do a lot of LLM wiki style things. So like there is like stuff in a repo, pull the research out, then like there is output from me, collect all the context and like grill me based on that. And still like during the interview at some point, I can just like, well, let's shell out to Codex, go run a couple more researchers because I need more options, like comparing to what you just give me. gave me. And that gives, and also like I'm using it for the cross review because like we arrived to the plan. I like, well, go ask Codex what Codex thinks about the plan. Like ask Codex to put. So like I'm using another AI just to do a little bit of for me, and then I basically tell like come back to me and now interview me about the findings. You do. It's exhausting, but like the result you get out of it is actually really good, and you need to check it less in the end.
Yeah, I come out with a kind of metric for my AI harness. It's called average working hours without human. Basically, how long agent can work without me. Because initially, I find a couple of annoying behavior of AI. It's kind of ping me every time to approve something, and I think who is actually controlling who? It's a AI who push me work. You human, approve that, approve this, or it's me who tell AI what to do. So, and I invented metric and start taking it. So its first was from the 1 minute. Now I reach 1.5 hour of working without a human. Again, using that approach that Andrey mentioned to prepare a more detailed plan, prepare the environment for agent as well, I guess all the tests which Fernando mentioned, and after it can run much longer. So this is now my kind of goal, to let it work without me as long as possible. Ideally the whole day, of course, like as humans, like as a whole 8-hour day. This is my ideal dream. Well, let AI work like as the whole 8 hour without asking me what to do. But yeah, let's see how far we can get.
You know, there is like a skip dangerous permissions flag. Ask you nothing.
Do whatever.
Do whatever. Ask you nothing.
I think for me, I realized, as you guys are mentioning, similar things, but like what I brought, maybe again from the old ways of doing things. Like I moved the other people were doing as well, the backlog as a markdown file inside of the project, right? But then with these skills, I basically first had this kind of spec generator skill that does somewhat what Andrey is mentioning. But this is usually when it's a new project, right? But it's going to ask me questions and basically create a spec MD that says what this project is about, like what kind of the things we are going to use. There are different layers. So you have a data layer. So it's going to talk about how you're going to store data, an API layer. Does it have an agent layer or not? And for each one of these layers, you have a skill that's more specialized on that layer, right? So the spec becomes kind of the description. You can invoke these layers to scaffold if it's a new project, or at least to map the existing project if it's an existing one. And then there is a backlog that I always say, for example, I had an idea during the night. Like Andrey, I also like to work in the night. But then sometimes I would also feel like, man, I'm exhausted now to do this properly, right? So now I go there. I have like a backlog manager, let's say a product owner, where I will say like, hey, create a backlog item with this idea, right? And because of the context, it writes like a pre-contract, let's say, definition of that feature needs refinement, right? With the status needs refinement. So after that, I can do the refinement, and that's where we go deep into that particular feature. So, for example, in the morning, then I refine multiple items. There is already a mapping on dependencies, if any. And then now I can just release the agents, like Vladimir was saying, to say like, hey, everyone starts your own work tree and then work in parallel, right? And now everything is refined. So they don't need to ask me. I already discussed before. And during the refinement, there is already the check if there is any conflicts and things like this. So this helped a lot to track the progress as well, because now for every feature, there is a contract, like there is a markdown file in the repo that the agent can go back to. And let's say there is defined work, like it would be for a team. Let's say you define a sprint, now you define a day of work and you give it to agents. Charge one as the tech lead. I don't know, it's like just now delegate and make it happen, right? So the delegation is still a work in progress, but the definition of the work is working very well. So it was a nice thing.
You have to rename the podcast like Agentic AI for project managers.
Yeah, this now became a But in the end, I
that,
think this is a conversation for engineers, right? Like our role is
yeah,
lifting up. So now
Yeah.
you're starting to
exactly.
become a lot more of a manager of agents than actually the builder, like writing the Terraform code and the stuff we used to do before. But it's fun indeed. It's a bit of project management thing that we usually didn't like much.
You know,
Mm.
some people are actually create these virtual offices where AI is kind of walking and sitting on a table and typing the keyboard. I saw the funny video. Just
Just
yeah.
to see your agents doing work.
Yes,
I saw
agents are working. I saw them. They're
it's
working. They're
crazy, right? Like
typing.
the level we get, man, with this stuff.
Mm.
But it's interesting. I think in the end for me it was like you can move very fast, but it's always important always important. It still helps a lot, at least in my case, to bring a bit of this practice that we know, bring more reliability to the process so that you can reach this 8-hour work without having to keep pressing enter, allow, right? Or say do whatever you want, because it's also, we discussed before, right? You need to be very careful with this as well. So it's a balance there that it still need to be discovered.
Let's see how it's gonna be in 6 months.
Yeah. It's going to be another age, right? By the way, I saw Opus 4.8. I need to look into what changed for that. But
Oh, it's kind
everything's
of a
moving
lot,
too
actually.
fast.
Yeah, you know the term that someone say that AI is the last thing that humans invent.
I heard of
You
this,
know
yeah.
that statement.
We'll
I've
see
seen
about
it.
that. We
Yeah.
haven't invented the cure for cancer yet. Just saying.
You know, but it basically means that the next invention will come from AI itself.
Will come from AI, not
Basically,
from human mind.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
We'll see.
I
Just
think it's
things
kind
for
of the
us.
open question just yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I believe there
Alright.
was a test where people basically gave let's say, trained the model on the data available to 1918,
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
then asked the model like to invent stuff that we already know people invented after.
Yeah, I saw that.
I actually don't remember what the outcome was, but it wasn't like nothing like that breakthrough. So, yeah, the invention with
Yeah,
AI is kind of not AI inventing on itself, but AI inventing more of the like it's like a new capability for humans when it comes to the research.
no, we
Yeah.
mostly by the AI at the moment we mean like as large language models, the generative part of the AI. So it's a
You mean the
generate.
classical ML?
No, I'm missing. It's supposed to generate from whatever is already exists. So
Yeah,
it's kind of a bit hard to generate if some things do not even exist.
Yeah.
And
There is no creativity, right? It's just
imagination, a
reinventing.
human imagination thing.
Exactly. Imagination is not there, right? So new things. It's
and some inventions like champagne, for instance, they were made by mistake.
exactly.
You gotta have massive humans for that to make them.
You invent based on your experience, right? On things you do, not on
Yeah.
just on things you know. So it's
Actually, it's an ethic topic. Like, it's how many things are actually invented by mistake. I think it's quite a lot.
yeah, that's
So if you
That's a
think,
lot.
it's quite a
All
lot.
right.
Okay.
We missed 1 week, but we are back because like we were traveling to many events, so we missed last week, but we are back now, and there will be a new episode next week where we're actually going to be talking what is it we are building. The more details we'll be hinting about it through the episodes, but next episode will be dedicated to that. With this, I wish you to have a great weekend and talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in. Bye bye.